Going on YouTube, Cloverbell's here back with another Scarlet and Violet video, and today we're going to be spotlighting Kingambit for the regulationE format. So welcome back, the King, after a few months of a little bit of mediocrity in regulationD. Kingambit is once again triumphant in regulationE. Yeah, it's pretty good again, and for a few reasons, right? And just considering what it can bring to the table, you can kind of see why Kingambit is back on the rise. But first of all, let's re-look at it, just again, in case of people have forgotten what this thing is capable of doing. Base 100 HP, 120 defense, and 85 special defense. Very, very, very bulky Pokemon. Great stats all around. 135 attack, of course. Very, very good. And again, the speed of 50 makes it pretty good in Trick Room. Does speed tie with something like an Iron Hands, a Azumarill, and a few others, right? Ursaluna to name another. But this is where something like Sucker Punch can really help you out there, right? Because this is one of the selling points of Kingambit. Whether it's Trick Room or Tailwind teams, you can just click Sucker Punch, and it's a stab move, right? So it's going to do a ton of damage. And really, the set that has been circling around and has been finding the most success is this Black Glasses set with Sucker Punch, Swords Dance, okay, along with Protect here, and then Kowtow Cleave, right? So you have a standard dark move here with Kowtow Cleave. You have Swords Dance for a potential setup play. Here's your priority move, and then here's Protect. Now, that being said, some people have opted for something like Assurance, right? So if you did take some damage, then it's going to double in damage, of course. So this is really good outside of Trick Room. So in case Kingambit does take any kind of hits, then the Assurance is just going to do a ton of damage, right? So you can definitely go that route. But Kowtow Cleave here is totally fine here. So, Kingambit, just being Dark Steel, yes, you are 4 times weak to fighting type attacks. But again, this is why you have Terrestrialization, where you can literally just go into something like Terra Flying, which will resist the fighting damage. Or you can even bypass some of those ground type attacks from something like, either Landorus. But then at the same time, you can also just consider Terra Fire, which will resist the Ogerpon Grass and even the Fire move, especially the Fire move, right? And then, of course, it'll also resist Flutter Mane Fairy type attacks. So there's some good synergy here, or good ideas here with Kingambit Fire. And then, of course, the resistance to Fire type attacks in general, right? From something like an Arcanine, and then even Will-O-Wisp Pressure. So, you can bypass some of that. But Terra type Dark as well, just for a little bit of a boosted Sucker Punch damage just goes a long way, especially with Black Glasses, right? So, and then of course the Defiant ability, right? This is again, really, really good. And if you just look at what's strong right now in terms of Intimidators, right? Landorus, of course, the premier Intimidate Pokemon. Kingambit can always just click Sucker Punch against the Landorus. And if the Landorus doesn't have that much bulk, then you can probably just pick up some KOs depending on if they've taken chip damage or not. But then at the same time, consider the Hisuian-Arcanine, or even regular Arcanine for that matter. This is also why Terra type Fire is also pretty good here. So again, if you want to intimidate the Kingambit, then you can just go with Terra type Terra Fire here, and then be able to resist the Flare Blitz, right? And then you just might consider, if you're in the point of view of these two Pokemon, like, okay, like I intimidate the Kingambit and I proc its Defiant, but then don't I just go first and KO it? Well, yes, you can, but again, this is why Terrestrialization is an option here. So you have to be aware of that if you are, Landorus and Arcanine. And then, of course, you are going against like the occasional Gyarados here. It's still running around, of course. So, lots of good Intimidate Pokemon that Kingambit can, just take advantage of. And, if you can just pair your Kingambit with like a strong physical attacker, then you can't really intimidate it, right? It just punishes you in that sense, right? And Landorus is really common, almost on every team with something like Iron Hands, just because, Landorus does really well against the Ogerpons running around. So the more Landorus there are, then the more value Kingambit has, I would say, right? So there's the discussion there. But then not just like the anti-intimidate Pokemon, right? But then you just consider something like Tornadus, okay, and even like Flutter Mane, where now what they're able to do is just like these Tornaduses, they either have Bleakwind Storm and or Icy Wind, right? And same thing with the Flutter Mane. Some of these Flutter Manes are like, Choice Specs, Icy Wind, and what you're able to do is just catch them off guard. And if you feel like they're clicking or going to click Icy Wind, then what I've been able to do in some games is just switch into Kingambit and get the Defiant boost that way. So you made me slower, all right, which is fine because I don't really use the speed stat that much anyway. And then now you just activated Defiant, right? And now I'm just getting +2 sucker punches across the board, right? So in that sense, yeah, it's looking pretty good. And then if you just consider Indeedee size spam, so like Indeedee with something like Armor Rouge, right? Like again, you're a dark type, you're gonna not take expanding force damage, so that's kind of fine. You are susceptible to the fire type attack, but again, this is why you have the terrestrialization available to the Kingambit. And the Indeedee is almost every single time either forced to click follow me or the Armor Rouge is forced to click a terrestrialization button because if you just take too much damage from Kowtow Cleave altogether, right? And then at the same time, if you sacrifice the Indeedee, then yes, something like Torkoal can come in, or even something like Ursaluna can come in. But at the same time, you know, if you can just remove their terrain with something like a Rillaboom on your team, or just have Intimidate support from a Landorus, then even though they may get Trick Room up, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things because after that, Kingambit is just still okay, right? So you can sit in front of these guys, and then just overall like just support your main physical option, right? So if you're running something like Ogerpon here, then you know of course you want to intimidate the Ogerpon, right? Because this is getting a free +1 boost. But then Kingambit says, you know what? You might intimidate my Ogerpon, but now you're just giving me a boost, right? And then I become the sweeper rather than my Ogerpon, right? So there's the value in that sense. And then what you're able to do is like when you set up these Swords Dances and go to like +2, you can EV this to an extent and just like click Sucker Punch and KO an opposing Ogerpon, especially if they don't have any bulk, which I think is extremely valuable in that sense. So, you know, go figure there, right? So now what I want to do is just like show you a couple of teams where the Kingambit has some great value there and explain its role on those teams. And then from there, we'll build our own team and then we'll showcase it in a sample best-of-3 showdown game, right? Because now best-of-3 is available on Showdown Ladder, and we will have a game to show you with our Kingambit squad, all right? But let's take a look at some of the successful teams thus far in some tournaments just to give you some ideas on how you too can also use Kingambit. Okay, so let's look at the Beast Coast tournament here, and let's look at Justin Tang's team here for a second. By the way, we were there. I think many of you knew that already from the pictures, but yes, we were there. But looking at Tang's team here, so basically, here's the Kingambit, right? He also has an Iron Bundle, by the way, and we're going to do a separate video on Iron Bundle and its resurgence as well. But with Kingambit here, so this is not the Swords Dance variant here because, first of all, I think he has the Swords Dance here on the Ogerpon instead, which makes sense, right? So instead, he put the Swords Dance there, and then the Kingambit is just a Goggles set with Assurance, Iron Head, and Sucker Punch. So good idea with the steel coverage here. And of course, we already discussed Assurance and Sucker Punch. So Terra Fire, like we mentioned, is pretty good here. Again, resistance against the Ogerpon. And then at the same time, you know, you give yourself a Mungus immunity with Spore. You can also, you know, just bypass some of these powder moves, right? Rage Powder is also something you can get past. So that's a good idea here. And then if you just look at these options like, you know, Iron Hands, Ogerpon, Landorus, Rillaboom, these are like 4 physical options. You don't want to get intimidated, right? You know, in terms of these things. So then Kingambit can kind of give you a little bit of insurance there. And then at the same time, like you have a Redirector and you have a Fake Out Pokemon, right? Actually, you have double Fake Out here, might I add. And actually, no, he doesn't have any Redirection. He just has double Fake Out, which is, again, still like pretty good compensation here. So Rillaboom and Iron Hands, double Fake Out pressure. So probably also able to help the Ogerpon set up here. And then at the same time, you have Icy Wind on the Iron Bundle, Booster Energy Icy Wind, right? Which is great. That's pretty good until like some of these Tornadus, you know, mirrors. And then here's the Landorus or Choice Scarf. So now your Landorus can outspeed stuff, which is important, right? And again, you can't really, you know, bring in anything too risky to try and intimidate these options because you have access to Kingambit, and this is also, you know, what you're gonna play in some of those side room games, right? So good here from Mr. Justin Tang. If we just take a look at some other stuff, like even this one, right? Same thing, Beast Coast, Mr. Brian Yum, and again, here's the Kingambit yet again. Similar ideas here. So now this is where the Ogerpon has Follow Me. This is the Wellspring Ogerpon. And then here's the Swords Dance variant with like Black Lashes / Dread Plate. You know, so the same idea here. But ton of damage here. Flutter Mane, Shio, we already know what these two things can do. Two good, strong special attackers. But now, if you just consider like Landorus, Ogerpon, and Iron Hands, again, 3 more Pokemon that don't want to get intimidated. And then the Kingambit just gives you a little bit more extra security here for like a good priority move here, right? And even back here in Justin Tang's team, right? So, you know, Ogerpon, Grassy Glide, Rillaboom, Grassy Glide, you know, Kingambit, Grassy Glide. I'm sorry, not Kingambit, Sucker Punch. So 3 Pokemon with a priority move. So you don't really have too much to worry about in terms of like the Trick Room stuff. And then you always have Rillaboom to remove the Indeedee terrain so that you can click these priority moves. So it makes a lot of sense here. And it was similar idea here with Mr. Brian. You know, Snarl, great support here with like special attack reduction. You already have Landorus for Intimidate support. So good damage mitigation coming out here. And then, you know, all important in trying to set up this Kingambit Swords Dance. So smart idea here. And then here's the Icy Wind from the Flutter Mane as opposed to the Iron Bundle. So I would imagine this is maybe even like a timid Flutter Mane set with Booster Energy and Protect. But again, good idea here from Brian. And then if we go into the Wide League tournament, here's another one here, another similar idea here with Kingambit. So you can always use this for like Landorus, Iron Hands, Sinistcha, Trick Room shenanigans. But I also noticed there is no Trick Room on the Sinistcha, so oh well. But at the same time, it is another Swords Dance variant with, again, the black glasses. So do you have Intimidator? Yes, you do. Do you have Redirection? You do. You have 2 of them. Okay, and just in case you need to just literally raw Swords Dance, and you might take damage, but then at the same time, you have Clefairy here, so you can always just click Heal Pulse. And I kind of like this a lot because, like, yes, there was a Snorlax, you know, if you just consider what Wolfglick had, and the Snorlax was there for a reason, but this can also kind of serve in the sense, and now you get a Dragon Fairy Steel Core with Kamo, Clefairy, and Kingambit. And at the same time, you're still providing a little bit of support for your Iron Hands and Landorus. You know, 2 things, again, that don't want to really get intimidated. But at the same time, I think you can also do some shenanigans with Strength Sap, right? I think, don't quote me on that. I haven't actually tried that, but yeah. But anyway, Kingambit also great switch-ins into like Ice-type attacks. So like if you just look at this, you know, Landorus doesn't want to take an Ice-type attack. Como also doesn't want to take an Ice-type attack. Sinistcha also doesn't want to take an Ice-type attack. So Kingambit being a Steel type, great switch-ins into like those Chien-Pao Ice-type attacks in general. But like all in all, you know, Clefairy, Kingambit lead here. You know, set up Swords Dance. You're relying on Friend Guard here to give you support. And you just click Sucker Punch until the cows come home, or Kowtow Cleave in that sense, right? But yeah, this is another good way to utilize Kingambit. Then over here, remember this was done in previous formats where you had like a Steel type like Kingambit or Goldango on a Rain team, and you kind of see that here. So from Mr. Fred G, top cut result with 4-2 record. Politoed Basculegion Rain team with Kingambit as a Steel type to function within that Rain, and then everything else is just like, you know, okay, whatever. Like you got Zapdos here with Tailwind and Hurricane, of course. Then you have the Sylveon here with 3 moves, but Pixie Plate, you know, again, something relatively slow that can function within the Trick Room here with Sinistcha, which also enjoys the Rain by Diab. But again, good synergy here with Kingambit. And just in case, like, again, you know, here's the Basculegion. You don't want to get intimidated, right? So here's another good way to do it. But this is Assault Vest Kingambit with Terra Flying. Okay, so that works in that sense. Okay, and, you know, again, we explained why Terra Flying is also pretty good here with Terra Blast. You know, bypassing, you know, ground type attacks and resisting fighting type damage. So I do like Terra type Flying. I think it makes a lot of sense. But if you want to do like Kingambit on a Rain team, that's definitely possible, as what Fred G is doing here. Then over here, this is like a very standard like hyper offensive team with like Tornadus, Chien-Pao, Urshifu here. And now you just throw in Landorus and Dragonite. And then Kingambit also wants to come here. So again, a little bit more extra security in the sense that, you know, in those Trick Room games, you know, you have something to bring here. And this is a Life Orb Kingambit, might I add, with Terra type Ghost. So the fighting move gets whiffed. You can't fake out the Kingambit, but it is 3 attacks here: Kowtow Cleave, Sucker Punch, and Iron Head. So just in case you don't really, or if you find it difficult to try and set up the Swords Dance, you can just go raw damage Kingambit with Protect. And I guess it works that way to a degree. But, you know, again, Dragonite, Chien-Pao, Torn, Rapid Strike, Urshifu, and then Landorus and Kingambit, right? So it's almost like a 2-2-2 team to a degree. But here's another way to consider running it. Okay, then Tanner, one of our good friends who we featured in the channel back during the Sword and Shield days, he actually won a tournament with using Side Spam, might I add, and then having Kingambit on his own team. So that's pretty cool here. So here's Indeedee Armrouge, here's Torkoal Lilligant, of course. These are two standard options, or I should say two standard cores. But again, Kingambit, you know, you don't have Sucker Punch here. You just have Kowtow. Well, actually you do, which I'm it's a little bit tricky, right? You know, there is Psychic Terrain, so I guess with Trick Room you don't click Sucker Punch, you just click Kowtow Cleave. And then you can always do like Indeedee Kingambit plays where like you click Follow Me, Redirection Support, and click Swords Dance. So you can set things up that way. You can even click Trick Room, and then the Kingambit can also click Swords Dance if you're ambitious enough, and if it calls for it, then you just have like +2 Kowtow Cleaves, which can, you know, really be very consistent here. And then here's that Terra type Fire yet again to be able to resist the Ogerpon stuff. So, you know, we've seen Terra Dark, we've seen Terra Fire, we've seen Terra Flying. Again, these are all good Terra type options on your Kingambit depending on how you want to play it, right? But again, shout out to Tanner here. This is pretty good. All right. Then over here, Mr. Deviron, you know, 7-run record. So similar concepts as some of the earlier teams we were looking at, where you have Kingambit, and then strong physical attackers like Rillaboom, Ogerpon, and Landorus. So support them. And then here's the bundle yet again, just like Justin Tanding with Icy Wind. And then over here is Farigiraf, which can actually set up said Trick Room. And now all of a sudden those Tailwind teams are in a little bit of trouble. You can't click any priority moves. Kingambit all of a sudden with this Life Orb, Terra Fairy can become the sweeper here. So again, another team where you have a little bit of variance in the Kingambit set that can still do relatively well. But again, still the same idea, like a bunch of Grassy Glide boys, Landers here with Intimidate, and then, you know, just providing support for this King. No Swords Dance here, right? Because the Swords Dance, is it on anyone actually? It is not. Oh, well, you have Nasty Plot for Farigiraf. All right. Well, there's that setup move, but there is no Follow Me here. That's okay. You know, not necessarily needed, but at the end of the day, it's still a pretty solid squad altogether. This is an interesting way of using Farigiraf with Nasty Plot. All right, one more here, Rang Homie. So again, another 7-1 record, same core. This time you have Heatran and Flutter Mane here, but again, you can kind of see some of the similar ideas that people are using. Fake Out Mons, Redirector, like the Wellspring Mass Ogerpon over here, and then Intimidate support. You know, just all in all to help set up a Kingambit play, which is back again here with the Black Glasses Terrifier here with Kowtow Club, Sucker, Swords Dance, and Protect. So again, I've shown you differences in some of the variants that some of these Kingambit players can use, but ultimately you can either put it on some of these physical aggressive teams like this, you know, with 4 strong physical options. You can put it on a rain team, which is great. You can put it on a Trick Room team, also pretty good. But again, you know, multiple different archetypes you can put it on. It's very splashable, kind of like Iron Hands to an extent, right? Which is great, right? So it also has pretty good value with something like Roaring Moon, but Roaring Moon has Milotic for that. But just in case if you wanted to go for like a different water option, you can definitely do like Roaring Moon Kingambit. I think that's also pretty good. Same thing with like Kamo-O, you know, another good dragon type that you want to try and put the Kingambit with. Where is it? I think I missed it over here. Yep, I think I lost it. Okay, that's fine. Either way, doesn't matter because we already spoke about it. But now what we can do is just go back into the builder and let's see what we can do with Kingambit and see if we can follow some similar templates. All right, we're going back here into the ladder, and like I said, we're gonna, you know, try and finish off the squad that we have here. So basically, we'll still use the Ogerpon Kingambit kind of deal here. So from here, I think you just add some of the staples that some of these other teams were using. I definitely want something like a Rillaboom here, you know, where you just get Grassy Glide pressure all around. And then over here, of course, the Ogerpon will also get Grassy Glide. And then at the same time, you know, you just get something like Landorus to give you Intimidate support. And then at the same time, you have 3 physical Pokemon that, again, wouldn't really want to take an Intimidate, but you can scare them off with something like a Kingambit, right? And then over here, Flutter Mane, you know, you definitely want to bring this thing. You know, you got to get some special attack damage, right? And then over here, in this last slot, you have some options, right? You can simply just put like Tornadus here, and now you have like this idea, you know, double Genie yet again with Flutter Mane, and then a couple strong options here, and then Kingambit is like your little outlier here, where you can just bring this in into some Trick Room games, like something like Cresselia or some size spam games. You can definitely do that in this regard, or you can just say, you know what, we don't really need Tornadus, which by the way is also like kind of iffy at the moment. It's still like very good, but I don't know if it's as good in Regulation E as opposed to Deep. But you can also just do simply like Chien-Pao here, and now you have Chien-Pao, Rillaboom, Ogerpon, and Kingambit, 4 Pokemon with priority moves. Right, and again, another physical attacker that can definitely benefit, with not having to deal with Intimidate, of course, right? And the Landorus here also benefits from Chien-Pao, just a little bit more damage. But again, you have 2 ways to do it: either Tornadus route or Chien-Pao route. And I guess we'll get both, just so that we give you something to play with, or try out with both. But this is the set we're going to use. Okay, so we have the Swords Dance, Kowtow Cleave, Sucker Punch set, the Ogerpon here. We're going to just do simply like Follow Me. All right, and then we'll do Ivy Cudgel. All right, Grassy Glide here. So you have your 2 stab moves, and then of course Spiky Shield for Protect, right? So, I could have also gone Swords Dance here, but then you just don't do Sucker Punch. I'm sorry, you don't do Swords Dance here on the Kingambit, right? So up to you. But again, this is a Kingambit video, so of course we're gonna put Swords Dance on this thing. From here, Rillaboom here, again, Terra Fire, very, very strong right now on a lot of different mons, just to be able to provide resistance, for Chien-Pao attacks, provide resistance against opposing Ogerpons, both the fire and the stab moves, right? It does make you weak to the water, but again, that's okay in that sense. All right, so Grassy Shores, bring out the grassy terrain. Let's give this the Assault Vest, Fake Out Pressure, Grassy Glide, and then what do we want? U-turn, your pivot move here, and then something like High Horsepower. A good ground coverage here on Rillaboom. You can also technically just go like Wood Hammer here. I think that's also very, very good. But sometimes you don't have the Landorus, or you can't even bring the Landorus, and you need ground coverage. So the Rillaboom having High Horsepower now is actually very, very good. But if you like Wood Hammer here for a little bit more extra damage, like we've done in the past with our Rillaboom, you can definitely also consider it. But for now, I'm going to put High Horsepower for the sake of the video. All right, the Flutter Mane here. So couple of ways to run it. You can definitely do like a Choice Specs Icy Wind variant, but is that really necessary? Maybe it is to an extent, right? So I was running something like this. I was running Substitute Protect on this Flutter Mane, but then at the same time, I switched this up to like Choice Specs Icy Wind when I was running it with Tornadus. But I just put the sub here just to have a little bit of something to play in some of those Trick Room games. So, it did help me a little bit. So I just kept it. I went with Moonblast here, of course, and then Shadow Ball, then Substitute Protect. And then this was a modest booster energy set. So, a little bit more bulky, but, in the end, it still did the job that it needed to do. Choice Scarf Landorus, of course, with Stomping Tantrum, Terra Blast, Terra Flying. So Landorus is going to do some, Terrestrialization relatively often. U-turn over here, and then, of course, Rock Slide. And then the Chien-Pao, of course, Focus Sash with a standard set here of Icicle Crash, right? Not Spinner. You don't want to blow up your own terrain. Sucker Punch again, and then over here, Protect. Now, you can go something like Lash Out here, which can be pretty good if you did get intimidated. You can also have the option here, like we said, for Sacred Sword, which is the standard one. I've also seen some Haze Chien-Pao here, and the reason why Haze might be an interesting tech is just consider all the setup Pokemon, right? Like an opposing Kingambit, clicking Swords Dance, Ogerpons also clicking Swords Dance, Kamos clicking Clangorous Souls, getting 60 million stat boosts, wipe all that away, and then Snorlax, same thing, wipe it all away, and then even Dondozo that's still running around, right? So you have there's some good merit to Haze here. So if this is something that you're willing to explore, you can definitely do that as well. But in the video that we were doing, I just put Sacred Sword here, and it was still like kind of fine. All right, back here to Kingambit here. So basically, I just wanted to do like some general EV spreads here, and the main benchmark that I wanted to do with Kingambit was actually just to figure out how much investment would I need to be able to one-shot a lot of these Ogerpons after a Swords Dance, potentially, right? So I just went to 196. So this is the third benchmark here. And again, if you don't know what EV bumps are, I say this in every team building video. You must comment in the video description below asking what are EV bumps, right? Because if you're trying to play competitive Pokemon, it is a very fundamental aspect to understand. So this way, it really helps with your team building as far as like where you invest and why you invest, right? So here's the first one, right? So 176, right? Because again, every time you move the slider, it normally moves up by 1 point, but at the bump, it moves up by 2 points. And then after this, every 80 EVs comes the bump here, right? So once again, I'll follow this rule. It's going up by 1 point, but then all of a sudden, boom, 2 points. Here's the second benchmark, okay? Then the third one, another 80 EVs, so up to 196. And then here it is, 198. This is that third EV bump here. So again, comment if you don't know what they are, and if you want a little bit more understanding, I will reply. But this is it. So if you went here to the Pokemon damage calculator, all right, I went with 196 plus 2, and it does a lot of damage, right? So 102 investment, 102%, you know, and this is like if the Ogre Pawns have like some HP investment and aren't just like max attack and max speed, you know, especially like the fire one. So if they do have some bulk, you still have a chance to potentially just KO it. So, and this is what I was really going at, right? So then from here, you just max the attack here. And then these 60 EVs are just kind of like throw-in. I just went like about this much just to like potentially speed creep some other Iron Hands in this sense, right? Because we do have this speed tie in this sense. I just put 1 point in defense. You don't really need defense. And then just round it out here with special defense like this. And if anything, I just went 1 point faster in the speed, but these are just like throw-ins. If you just want to do something like this and then just dump the rest into special defense like this, that's totally fine as well. But I just want a little bit of a speed creep, you know, with the potential from the Iron Hands in this sense, right? So I just did about 75 here. Okay, the Ogre Pawn. So, you know, we've shown you some bulky sets in the past, right? And then here's another one. Like, again, all you really need is this 155 mark. Wait, no, let me go adamant here. You just really need about this 155 mark like this, because again, you know, first of all, after, you know, you outspeed Goldango, which is 149, but you know, after a Tailwind, you know, you'll hit 310, and then you just outspeed 307, which will of course outspeed the Flutter Manes that are +1. But again, if you look here, there's no Tailwind, so this spread actually functions better when you have a Tornadus here as opposed to Chien-Pao. So in this sense, I literally just went something like this. Again, just Jolly, max speed, and max attack. And that's totally fine as well on a team like this. I'll show you the bulkier set when I show you the Tornadus. But for now, again, this is the Chien-Pao set. Rillaboom here. So Adamant Nature, you know, 116. That's really all I was going for. I just went with like a bulky Rillaboom set in the grand scheme of things. And that's also like fine if you just, you know, really utilize it and position it well. But after this, I just went like this much just to get like a nice even number. 100 was pretty good. And then just dump the rest in speed like this, which will, of course, after an Icy Wind boost, be able to outspeed something like a Chi-Yu in that regard. All right, the Flutter Mane here. So we had Substitute, and sometimes you might even just go like Dazzling Gleam, or even Icy Wind with the Spec set here, or even just Icy Wind altogether. Right, and just go with like a timid Flutter Mane set. But in the grand scheme of things, I still went with Substitute here, and I went with a Modest set, and I'll use the same bulky Modest set that we've always been using, you know, something like this with 36 investment, 175 speed, which will outspeed Adamant max speed down Dozo, and then from here just you know, just count for the physical stuff from the Chien-Pao, which is what we were doing here with 116 and 196. This will survive the Adamant Chien-Pao attacks. So, you know, might as well just go for that in this sense. Landorus here is Choice Scarf. I always just go with max speed Landorus here. So this way, if I run into Dragapult, I can always outspeed it because this will hit 214. And then I just went with 116 investment, you know, just to the second bump here was all I needed. And then just put 1 point in the bulk and then just dump the rest into HP like this. Chien-Pao, you know, like I said, we already did. So yeah, and this is like, you know, very easy to just like set up and just start on ladder. So, you know, here's the pace. Okay, and I'll show you one with Tornadus at the end. But what I want to do now is at least take this team and let's do a best of 3. All right, Pokemon Showdown's best of 3 format. So we matched with this. It is Dragapult and Chien-Pao here. So remember how I did that speed tier with Landorus. So I think Landorus can do relatively well here, especially depending on the Terra. We can do well into the Heatran, the Iron Hands, and even that Chien-Pao, I'm sorry, well, technically, yes, also that Chien-Pao, and then Intimidate the Ogerpon. It is a water type, so it can get tricky. This Cresselia did have Ice Beam, as I saw in the base, so that made things a little bit difficult and tricky. But again, U-Turn is also very, very good damage altogether. So Landorus should come. And then from there, Ogerpon also has some idea here. But, you know, Kingambit also looks relatively well here, especially against Dragapult and the Cresselia. So I think Kingambit for sure comes. Okay, and then from there, you know, I guess I can bring Flutter Mane just for like Iron Hands and Dragapult. And even, you know, the Cresselia. And he's also Chien-Pao here. You know, very susceptible to Flutter Mane in this sense. But of course, it just needs to be in the right position. Right? So in terms of leading off for game one, here is the Flutter Mane and Kingambit. And here is the Iron Hands and the Cresselia. So, of course, he's probably, you know, thinking fake out Trick Room, which is totally fine. But he can also snipe the Flutter Mane here and just go for Heavy Slam and Trick Room. So what I'm going to do first is to play it safe and scout. Let's protect here and let's go with the sub here just in case. What I probably should have done is, like, not even just care about this, but he could have, like, Drain Punched me anyway and just said, oh, yeah. But he would be giving up the Iron Hands in that sense, but he could have also Terra'd, right? So I just played it safe. Let's protect Kingambit. And let's set up the sub on the Flutter Mane. He did go for the greedy play and tried to kill the Flutter Mane. There is the Trick Room, right? So now I just don't know, you know, who's going to win this speed tie. It might be him, it might be me. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm going to go into Landorus. Let's Intimidate. Okay, let's protect the Flutter as well. And just in case he does it again, he went for Wild Charge. So that's kind of funny. Psychic does a lot of damage there. But I went into Kingambit yet again. So I just burned my Flutter. And there's Drain Punch and there's the Ice Beam. So he does target the Landorus this time instead of the Flutter, but here we go, Flutter yet again. Here's Chien-Pao. That's okay. Probably thinking like protect in this sense, right? And I'm surprised he still did that, right? So I misread him. So he gets to pick up the Flutter Mane with a Heavy Slam. So I chose not to protect because I thought he would read it and go for the Kingambit. He did not. All right, so that is an error for me, but you know, we still play on. So I'm down 2 mons. He still has all 4. I go for Swords Dance, by the way. So now here's my own Chien-Pao. There's still 1 turn left of Trick Room, so of course, naturally, I actually just go double Protector just for like the fake out shenanigans. And he actually just went for Protector. I don't know why he did that. But back into Iron Hands, Terra Dark. Sucker Punch does a ton of damage, but that's okay because we click Sacred Sword there and we go to Kata. It does so much into it. That's a resisted hit, by the way. All right, so that's still pretty good into Iron Hands. All right, there's the Cresselia, and we make the smart play here. So there's the Chien-Pao Protect. Double Protect altogether in the grand scheme of things. All right, he did Sucker, right? So I went Sacred Sword here, and then I also clicked Swords Dance because I know he's just going to get up Trick Room, right? Which is still totally fine because he brings in the Iron Hands. I just protect Chien-Pao, keeping my fake out. He goes for the Chien-Pao rather than my Kingambit, which means this is a free snipe into the Iron Hands with the Kowtow Cleave, and he has no one to Lunar Blessing anymore, right? And here's the Ogerpon. This is pretty much done. Sucker Punch there and Kowtow Cleave there. We killed the Cresselia, and he does go for the Chien-Pao here. But again, it doesn't really matter because now it's a 2-on-1, so we are able to take game 1. So, you know, again, we lost 2 early options. We didn't really position them relatively well, I would say, but Kingambit was able to save the day because it had Swords Dance and it had Sucker Punch. So there's the value already. All right, so in game 2, I decided to simply lead Flutter and Rillaboom this time. And here's the Iron Hands and the Chien-Pao. So it could be pretty good here for me, you know, depending on how I use the Rillaboom and how I use the fake out and what I decide to use with the Flutter. I can easily just like fake out this Iron Hands and click sub on the Flutter Mane. But in that sense, you know, I just don't know if the Chien-Pao is fast. Like if he attacks the Flutter, then I just drop to like maybe some health, and that's not enough for sub. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that was an optimal play. So, you know, what I decided to do instead was this. We go for the Terra Fire, and he protects Chien-Pao by not trying to get faked out, but I actually fake out the Iron Hands here. And I wanted to try the Moonblast into the Chien-Pao. So, oh well, and I think he just goes for the, well, he can, right, because we faked out the Iron Hands. So now turn 2, he goes into Ogerpon here. So we do Glide and we do Moonblast the Ogerpon. So he does click Ice Spinner. So what I could have also done was actually just, you know, Grassy Glided the Chien-Pao and Moonblasted it again. You know, considering that was a threat because the Ogerpon didn't really do anything. But We do remove it. Here's, you know, again, I do want to protect. I actually didn't even protect the Flutter here. I took a risk here thinking he might read me again. But I do have Kingambit here. Can't really do a whole lot in this spot, but there's the Last Shot into the Rillaboom. High Horsepower did a pretty good amount of damage, right? So we do protect against Drain Punch in that sense. I'm just not sure if Sucker picks up, and I don't think it does, even with black glasses. So, Terra Dark Chien-Pao, I do Sucker Punch that a little bit. He does click Last Shot again, and then he does pick up the KO. So that's unfortunate for me, and then I lose the Kingambit here. So I pretty much just forfeit here, you know, because all I have left is a Chien-Pao. So after both KOs, yeah, he does take game 2. So in that game, I guess, you know, I didn't account for his Chien-Pao clicking Terra Dark. I guess that's why he has it, along with Last Out, and probably thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna get Sucker Punched anyway, right? So, but yeah, I did not bring Landorus this game, which probably would have been pretty good here, but that just builds up the storyline for game 3. All right, game 3 here. So what I'm gonna do is now start off with this lead with Ogerpon and Rillaboom. So this way I can have Fake Out and Grassy Glide pressure. He goes with Iron Hands and Dragapult. So I'm surprised he brought the Dragapult here because, again, I have a Kingambit here, but maybe he didn't even care. I do Fake Out the Iron Hands here. I thought I was going to get Dragon Darted, but he clicked U-turn instead and goes into Crest, which is totally fine because we get to pop that thing on the head. And now what we can do is actually just try and remove this Iron Hands here. So he actually goes into Dragapult, which to me loses him the game because he had Chien-Pao in the back, which you'll see in a second. I don't really care about this Crest, right? Because it's not really exerting damage. He can click Ice Beam if he wants, but he just clicks Lunar Blessing, so I'm kind of just chilling there. And here is the Chien-Pao, right? He had Dragapult Chien-Pao in the back. He could have done something, but he doesn't. So there's the Terra Dark here. So there's Follow Me, and he wanted to click Sucker Punch, which is, you know, he probably could have clicked that here, which is why I did click Follow Me. So there's the U-turn into the Chien-Pao. Let's go into Landorus for Intimidate. All right, the Crest clicks Trick Room, which is fine by me because now my Ogerpon is faster than his Chien-Pao, and my Landorus can U-turn the heck out of here and go back into Rillaboom. All right, so I bought the Chien-Pao here. Okay, the Cresselia. Click a Psychic instead of Ice Beam, so I was a little shocked by that, but that just means I just get to U-turn into my Rillaboom here, like I said, and it goes into the Iron Hands, which we have a Landorus for, so all we have to do is just worry about Cresselia here. So Fake Out, Fake Out. I knew he would try this, and you always target the Crest either way after this, especially because, again, the double up is important. So let's go into Landorus. Let's Intimidate the Iron Hands and cycle. Play it safe. Does go for Drain Punch. We resist, and we do lose the Landorus. That's fine because we always bop the Crest here. So now it's just Rillaboom and Ogerpon, which is what we started with in game 3. Now it's just Fake Out plus Attack. This game's over. This set is over. There's the Ivy Cudgel, and now we just do whatever we want. Ivy Cudgel again because Trick Room is over, or we can just click Grassy Glide. We just go for the Grassy Glide because why not? And we end the game with a crit. So all in all, our opponent played well. He got me game 2, but you know, I think better positioning is what won us in game 3 because I felt like he played relatively well, but our pivot potential with U-turns and cycling is what won us this game. All right, back here into the builder. So now what you can do is just consider, you know, instead of Chien-Pao, you can just run something like Tornadus or Tornadus, as we all like to say. And now you have the option to just go for like, Covert Cloak, right? Along with Terra Ghost for the Fake Out and or E-Speed shenanigans. Just go Tailwind, Bleakwind Storm. Taunt is pretty good here, and then Sunny Day because, you know, Sunny Day reducing damage, you know, for from water type attacks into Landorus, you know, and then just making Ogerpon do a little bit more damage, of course, because of the Sunny Day. And then at the same time, you get to enable our Flutter Mane here, which is going to have the choice specs. All right, specs Flutter Mane is pretty good. And then you get the damage from the choice specs to compensate, right? Which means this is going to be Dazzling Gleam and Icy Wind. All right, and then the EV spreads are going to change. This is going to be a Timid set. All right, and then from here, about the 212, 124 idea, right? So this is going to go 132. This is going to outspeed the 187 modest max flutters. So you got that going for you. And then from here, just dump the rest into HP like this. And we've used this spread before in our rental team video. This, with your own Landorus Intimidate, survives Iron Hands Heavy Slam. It also survives, without Intimidate, the Chien-Pao adamant attacks, whether it's Icicle Spinner, Icicle Crash, Sucker Punch, you'll live it. Okay, so I changed the set in that way. And then over here with the Tornadus, you know, again, I just went with Bold Nature. Again, just having like good resistance just goes a long way. But here we go, 212 HP, 188 investment in the Bold Nature. This is what's going to live, you know, those Dragonite E-Speeds boosted by Chien-Pao in that sense. And also the Mystic Water Surging Strikes, you'll also live that as well. Then from here, you know, you just put a little bit into speed, something like this, right? I think it was actually 220, 188, right? Yeah, this is pretty good. In this sense, right? Because again, this bulk was calced for, again, the Mystic Water Urshifu as well as Dragonite Chien-Pao. The 142 speed outspeeds the 138s and 139s because, you know, after a plus or minus 1, they will surpass the max speed Flutter as well as the max speed Chien-Pao. You know, the adamant and modest versions, not the timid jolly ones. Okay, so a little bit of speed creeping there. And Landorus was okay. Flutter should have been Terra Fairy over here instead of Terra Ghost. Where are you? Yep. And then Rillaboom is the same. Yeah, so this is the Tornadus version. Okay. Which is still pretty good. Like, again, Timid Flutter with choice specs and Icy Wind speed control is going to help out, you know, with your Tornadus quite a bit. And then over here, we did show the modest variant with Chien-Pao here as opposed to Tornadus. So depending on how you like to view it, you can definitely consider that. Actually, you know what I can also do with the Ogerpon here is just do this. You know, again, make it relatively bulky. Like you can do about this much. Is this gonna hit me once? Go adamant here. Actually, let's mix it up a little bit. Let's go like adamant here, right? 176, right? Yeah, let's go right there, and then right here. This is your remaining bulk. All right, yeah, this is pretty good. So, you know, again, after Tailwind, you'll outspeed a lot of Flutters. You have Icy Wind support. Again, the +1 Flutters, right? That's what we're going for. But again, this is the Adamant Nature. Again, this is the Tornadus variant. You know, I felt like you can definitely just utilize this much. So again, let me just cancel on this one. So you have one with Tornadus, with the Timid Flutter and Adamant Ogerpon, or you have this one here with a Jolly Ogerpon and a modest Flutter Mane, right? So let me know which variant of the Kingambit squad you like, and hopefully you enjoyed our analysis of where Kingambit is right now and why it's succeeding in the meta. But if you need help with team building, like we've done, you know, with our rental codes, we can help you as well. If you sub to the channel with the tier 3 sub, you can get coaching from me, and you know, we just plan out a Discord call, and then we build the team that you need for either, you know, some tournament, an online ranked ladder play, or like a regional, which we've always done, you know, pretty much every single time. So if that's something you're interested in, check the video description below, click the link, join the channel with the tier 3 sub, or look at the pinned comment and join with the tier 3 sub that way. All right. We'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Peace out. Have a good one.